Hi gang, today I want to talk to you about participial phrases. They are very much sexy like the appositive phrase, almost in a weird way even more so, but here we go. Let's talk about it here. First of all, you should pick up the packet for this over by the door, and it'll be on the table there. Here's a list of sentence parts all written by professional writers with some parts deleted. Do you remember this from the last time? It's just like the appositives. We could see the lake and the mountains on the lake on the French side. Sadio had his reward. The sun rose clear and bright. Spencer took half an hour. Now, take these exact 4 sentences and add the sexy participial phrase. Check this out. Sitting up in bed eating breakfast, we could see the lake and the mountains across the lake on the French side. Sadio, searching the spot of black in the twilight sea that night, had his reward. The sun rose clear and bright, tinging the foamy crests of the waves with a reddish purple. Dang, that is good stuff. Spencer took half an hour swimming in one of the pools which was filled with seasonal rain, waiting for the pursuers to catch up to him. Now, the bold-faced phrases are participial phrases. Another cool way to do sentences. Now, you've been doing participial phrases, I believe, in your lifetime, but you may not know that you were doing it. Now, one of the problems, the good thing about participial phrases is it's just one more cool sentence structure to add to your repertoire. But if you use it incorrectly, you can get something called a dangling modifier. So it's not anything that you want to just take lightly. So let's look at the definition. It says participles describe nouns or pronouns. So that's what it has that in common with the appositive. It says that it describes, however. The appositive renames something. It's a noun for a noun. In this case, it's describing a nearby noun or pronoun. Present participles always end in ing. That's fun. You never get to see that word always in the study of the English language. Past participles usually end in ed. In the following example, the nouns and pronouns are underlined, the participles are capitalized, and the rest of the participial phrases are boldface. So this is a present participle. She was quite far from the windows which were to her left, and behind her were a couple of tall bookcases containing all the books of the factory library. So she was. This is the main clause. This is the meat and potatoes. What's left is this phrase, which you could take out and still have a complete sentence. So a participial phrase is just like the appositive phrase. You don't have to have it. It's added like gravy. So it's the phrase that you can remove. But look how this works. She was far from the windows which to her left, and behind her were a couple of tall bookcases. The bookcases containing all the books of the factory library. So this participial phrase modifies bookcase because it says what it's containing. This one says, minute fungi overspread the whole exterior, hanging in a fine tangled web work from the eaves. So we have fungi overspread. The fungi is hanging, and so it doesn't have to be right next to it, but what is hanging? The fungi. Let's go down to past participles. In the 6 months, a dozen small towns had been laid upon the naked planet, filled with sizzling neon tubes. So we have small towns had been laid is the main clause. That's the main clause. That's the meat and potatoes. This one, filled with sizzling neon tubes, filled describes the towns. It's an ed word that ends in ed. That's an extra phrase that gives us extra information that describes a noun in the main clause. I hope my pen didn't bleed through. Good, it didn't. All right. The tent, here's more past participle phrases. The tent, illumined by candle, glowed warmly in the midst of the plain. Tent is the subject. What did the tent do? It glowed. The tent glowed warmly in the midst of the plain. So there's your main clause right here. And this phrase, illumined by candle, is a past participial phrase. We don't have to have it there. Now here's here's a situation where you just have the participles but not the full phrase. Enchanted and enthralled, I stopped her constantly for details. So this is the participial phrase, but it's just made up of 2 past tense participles, and it describes I. Now, just like the appositive, these come in openers, closers, and splits. So here's an opener. Whistling, he let the escalator waft him still into the night air. Whistling is the participle. There's no extra word, so it's not a participial phrase. It describes he. Looking over their own troops, they saw is the main clause. Who saw? They were looking over. Amazed at the simplicity of it. So now here's the split. It's got to be right between the subject and verb. My father said I had plenty of time to eat. There's the main clause. The split is going to be right between the subject and verb with an ing word at the beginning. Then we have the closers. The entire crowd in the saloon gathered about me now, urging me to drink. So the crowd gathered is the main clause. Urging me to drink is the phrase that is the participle, and it comes at the end of the sentence. Now, practice 1 is hefty. Let me show you what I would like you to do with practice 1. Now, it seems like busy work, but this lesson is going to teach you how to avoid the dangling modifier. I know that sounds like something that would be a medical condition. It is not. We'll talk about it later. So it says, sometimes the positions of participial phrases in a sentence are interchangeable, meaning you can use the same phrase as an opener, split, or a closer. Opener, split, or closer. Sometimes, however, only 2 of the 3 positions, or even only 1 of the positions, is acceptable. The other positions would result in unacceptable grammar. So, the following practice requires you to make the right decision about the positioning of the phrases. So here's your directives. Number 1, unscramble each list of sentence parts 3 times. First, to use a sentence in the participial in the opener position, next in the split position, and finally in the closer position. Then classify the use of each position as either acceptable or unacceptable. So here's what you're going to do. We'll do the first one together. At the top of your paper, you're going to put participial phrases are, I messed around with my capitalization, delicious. Now, for number 1, you're going to unscramble the sentence and put it into an order so you have was waiting, Bernard, and wearing a black turtleneck. This is going to be your participial phrase. It starts with an ing word. This is not, it has an ing word, but it's not at the beginning of the sentence of the phrase. So I'm going to put this in the opener position. So I'm going to say, wearing a black turtleneck sweater, dirty flannels, and slippers, comma, Bernard was waiting on the landing. Now that's the opener. Now I'll do the subject-verb split. And I know that Bernard is the subject and was waiting is the verb. So I'll say, Bernard, comma, wearing a black turtleneck sweater, dirty flannels, and slippers. And now I have to put the verb in. Was waiting on the landing. Then I'm going to do the closer. And I'll start with the subject and verb. Bernard, was waiting. On the landing outside. Here comes the participial phrase. Wearing a black turtleneck, flannels, and slippers. Okay, now I have to look at all three sentences and make sure they're okay. Wearing a black turtleneck, dirty flannels, and slippers, Bernard was waiting on the landing outside. All right, that sounds good. Bernard, wearing a black turtleneck, dirty flannels, and slippers, comma, was waiting on the landing outside. That one works. Bernard was waiting on the landing outside, comma, wearing a black turtleneck, flannels. They all work. So you're going to use A for acceptable. So you're going to say A, and A for number one. Now, you're going to turn the page and do this for 2, 3, 4, and 5. So for 2, 3, 4, and 5, you're going to write 3 sentences each. And then put A for acceptable next to the ones that work. Put un for the ones that don't work. This will help you figure out how not to make this mistake. It may seem tedious, but just like sports, we don't learn anything by doing it just once. It's got to be muscle memory, but a muscle is your brain. Okay. Now, for the last 3 sentences, I just want you to unscramble them the way you think they sound best. That's all you have to do for 6, 7, and 8 is you don't have to do 3 sentences. Just unscramble these and put them together in a way that you think is best, and we'll compare them. So that's what I'd like you to do for practice 1. It's worth 25 points. I threw in an extra 5 because it's a lot of work. And this will be due on Friday. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.